seconded by the author herself, and hearing no objection, the motion is carried. All right. So since this is the first time the committee is conducting an inquiry on the film industry, um, or any inquiry for that matter in this Congress, we conducted several in the previous Congress for other creative industries. This meeting will proceed in three parts across 3 weeks. So this is an agenda that we were able to set with the stakeholders sometime during the holidays, December 2022. So we decided to narrow down the gamut of topics that we can cover into about 7 to 9. So for this session, we're going to be looking into the value chain of the film industry, which should give us a general overview of the sector, its players, the subsectors, the productivity levels, the pain points, the opportunities, the weaknesses, threats, strengths, the whole SWOT, as well as talking about film industry data collection and management. If we are to effectively craft policies moving forward, these are always best data driven rather than said by one or two or a few, and see where we are in terms of collecting this data. And then next week, we'll be discussing regulations in the film industry, specifically issues on intellectual property, piracy, which we already covered in a 2020 hearing that we conducted based on the online Metro Manila Film Festival, which was heavily pirated as it completely went online. We're also going to talk about workers' rights and welfare, which we discussed thoroughly in hearings in the Committee on Labor in the previous Congress when we were talking about the Eddie Garcia bill, as well as partially when we were talking about the freelance workers protection bill. The third is ease of doing business, which seems to be a very, very prominent pain point for a lot of our producers. We're talking about tax liabilities from amusement tax, permits from local government units if they're going to be shooting, customs regulations for, bringing in equipment, especially if it's a co-production or there's a foreign film outfit that's coming to the Philippines to shoot, as well as financial subsidies and film grants, mostly done through the Film Development Council, through their existing programs. And on the third week, we will look into opportunities we can get, given that by then we have a clearer picture of the industry. We'll be looking into marketing and promotional opportunities, the journey to the Oscars, just how long, how hard, how much that actually takes. And now looking into the season of Filipino talent, it seems that the world's eyes are turning towards Filipino creatives. We'll also do a deep dive into our own film festivals, probably have a SWOT analysis of the same. We'll look into the film industry and the soft power that it brings in terms of tourism, cultural diplomacy. We'll look into potential for co-production through our agreements, our global cross-country agreements. We'll also look at how film can contribute to development. And by development, we mean developing our audiences in terms of film literacy, even upskilling our industry workers. We'll look into local government collaborations. How can we highlight best practices in the regions by establishing local film commissions like what they used to have in Bohol, and maybe other provinces. And lastly, we'll look into our current film infrastructure, both physical as well as digital, to see how we can improve these as well. So we look forward to hearing more on other aspects of the industry in the succeeding hearings. And we actually, along with the stakeholders we invited last December in our alignment meeting, We will be inviting resource persons from both government and the private sector to propound their own sharings, insights into each um, topic. All right. So for the film industry value chain, we usually start with a DTI. This is something that they're able to do in-house with all of their resources and capacities. Now also that Film Development Council is attached to the DTI, moved from the Office of the President. We also have the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, which has a national committee on cinema. The Film Academy of the Philippines, which is quasi-government, and of course, Cultural Center of the Philippines, which has a film program. Especially, they always play host to Cinemalaya. And of course, the newly established Office of the Presidential Advisor for Creative Communications, who will be working alongside our office and all the other members of the creative bloc as well as DTI in championing the president's creative agenda. An exciting 2023 awaits all of us, indeed. And from the private sector, we're going to invite the SEAP, or the Cinema Exhibitors Association of the Philippines, as well as the Interguild Alliance for Film, to propound their own presentations. And then soon after, we'll invite DTI and the Philippine Statistics Authority on the data collection and management topic, as well as SEAP and PMPPA. All right. So on that note, let's proceed with a presentation from the government side. Who do we want to take up? Who can we take up first? Comsec.
The Chair Secretary Paul Soriano is around.
All right. Sec Paul, you have the floor, sir.
Hi, good morning to everyone. Yeah, it's an honor to be a part of this group. Of course, to Chair Toff, to Kong Camille, hello. Good morning to everybody, and of course, my fellow colleagues from the film industry. First of all, it's I'm very new to this, so I'm really listening, and I'm learning a lot. Obviously, this is a new role for me that the president has given me. Working closely with him for many years. It is an honor for him to create this office and to further push and help the creative industries and also the film industry and in the arts and culture in general. So yes, it's something new for me, but I am embracing the challenge because I'm very passionate about the film industry, of course, and of course arts and culture in general. Just some of the experiences if I may share, last week I had the privilege to travel with the president to Beijing, and I got to meet some of the leaders from the Chinese film industry who have been very vocal about collaborating with the Philippines and hopefully being able to show some of our films there. And the potential for that collaboration is, I believe, very positive, as their industry over there can definitely help us, at least from the revenue side of things. So there is a connection, and I'd be more than happy to share that with my colleagues from the film industry at a later time. But yeah, I don't want to speak too much, because I just want to listen and learn. And of course, meeting with Chairman Toff and some people from the DTI about a month ago, I'm very excited to help and to champion and help in any way that I can the film industry. And yeah, I'll be here also to bridge if there's anything, as my agency is attached to the Office of the President. I do have that access to go direct to him if there's anything that we need to push. I was with the president also in China discussing about creating some town hall meetings with stakeholders from the industry for him to listen firsthand, because he does have a lot of great ideas, and I know the heart of the president has a lot of culture and arts in it. So with that said, I don't want to take up much of the time, but thank you for having me, and I will submit a position paper after this hearing, and to see how else and more ideas I can bring to the table and take it from there. So thank you very much, everyone, and Have a good morning.
Thank you so much, Sec Paul. Looking forward to collaborating with you this year and the coming years. Um, so next up, we have a presentation from the Film Development Council of the Philippines. So Chairman Tirso Cruz III is with us this morning. Chair people, you have the floor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning, Tontok, and all the congressmen are present, and of course, all my colleagues from the industry. This is a very important resolution, House Resolution 451. The council, the Film Development Council of the Philippines appreciates our lawmakers' initiative and efforts in their continuous endeavor to hear and address the plight of the creative industry, especially po ang film and audiovisual sector. We welcome Representative Camille Villar's proposed House Resolution 451, a resolution directing the House Committee on Creative Industries and Performing Arts on the plight of Philippine cinema, with the intention of promoting more film and film productions to generate employment, reviving its renaissance and golden era, and visibly maximizing efforts to secure the country's first nomination or a win in the most prestigious Oscar Awards for Best International Film, formerly known as a Best Foreign Film. Anyway, we're all here and we're really ready and interested, Kong Tok, to be able to listen to what the plans are, and of course, to put in our 2 cents worth of pointers and suggestions as far as improving or making clear the needs to really strengthen the House Resolution 451. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair people. Would you be presenting something like maybe the plans of FDCP for 2023 and how exactly we can maybe have successfully submit a film for the Oscars in the future, and what needs to be done and how much is needed?
Initially, Kong Tok, we're in the process of planning it because it's sort of caught us unaware that we will suddenly break into the Oscars, and for the recognitions that that we've been getting, especially even with the on the job missing 8. We will be having new suggestions and new programs and improvements on these things. The FDCP right now are reviewing guidelines of the program that we have.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Perhaps in the next meeting, which will be next week, FDCP can present sort of like a rundown of what your programs will be for 2023 as funded in the GAA, so that the film industry is sort of apprised as to what kind of support they can look forward to. Would that be possible, Chair? Next meeting?
Yes, Kong Tok, it will be possible.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll move on to DTI. We have Assistant Director Joe Dan Darong, who I'm sure is equipped with a lot of data that can be shared with all of our stakeholders.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Good morning, Kong Tof. Actually,
Hi.
yes, we're currently just recently concluded our study on the film industry in the Philippines, Kong Tof. We wish to polish more about this because when we were able to talk with our internal team, there are data that we are still coordinating with the Philippine Statistics Authority. So hopefully in the next meeting, Kong Top will be able to share with you the details of the entire study. But as of the moment, for the interest of the group, allow me to just share the Malikhaing program. I think everybody would be interested about what we are going to do this year. we're actually poised to prepare for the Creative Industry Summit. I understand that the film industry is just one of the major sectors in the creative industry of the Philippines. But if I may be given the chance to share my screen, I'll share the program that we have in store for everyone. So um, um, again, good morning. I'm the Assistant Director of the Department of Trade and Industry, tasked as an interim to the Creative Industries Development Council Secretariat. Currently, as for the information of everybody, we're still in the process of getting the funds and the necessary preparations for the council to officially start and be created. At the same time, there will be a secretariat that will be supporting the council. The council will have an ex officio member of 10 members agency, and there will be representatives. It may interest for everybody that the entire creative economy of the Philippines has actually 9 creative industries or creative domains. And each of that domain has actually about 70 plus creative sectors. I want you to just focus your attention at least on the first level. So allow me to explain each of the. Sorry, please. Something is moving. Sorry, it's my. Let me start it here. Okay, so while we are discussing the film industry, it was still best to actually understand what is actually currently being experienced by our creative economy and creative industries in the Philippines. Basically, based on our study and initially based on our film industry study of the Philippines, we have identified these 5 major concerns. It's actually, para pong masasabi natin is actually not allowing the industry to really grow the way it should be. So first is the lack of statistics and official definition. And I think that is a very important topic today because we will really need to be able to see how well the entire film industry is moving towards the direction of trying to provide a specific mechanism for data collection. We've been having difficulty come off with the rest of the team trying to figure out who actually comprise the entire film industries and the specific sectors within it. And the lack of statistics and even the official definition within the parlance of film industry is also a problem. The second problem is on the limited access to capital that is actually highlighted in one of our major projects. Another one is the skills mismatch and the limited access to new technology. And more so, as we have discussed, we have to reach on the global stage. And I think there's a limited access to the global value chain. And in order for us to be able to solve that, the Department of Trade and Industry, and later on the Philippine Creative Industries Development Council will be comprised of different agencies poised to, help the creative economy of the Philippines. We're looking forward with this market intelligence and insights mechanism, and through we continue ComTOF to complete our industry studies. Apologies if the film industry study is not yet complete as of the moment, but as I'm happy to see that there will be upcoming hearings and meetings for the film industry. We hope to be able to complete by that time. To solve the limited access of capital and in terms of skills mismatch, the Malikhaing Pinoy for the year is actually poised to create this creative venture fund wherein grants, equities, including soft loans will also be afforded and accorded to our creative sectors. And focus will be also given to the film industry together with our colleagues from the FDCP. There will be also a way for us to be able to further develop the creation of a strong creative learning academy. We have learned in our industry studies that there is a need for us to build competencies. At the same time, there should be a mechanism for business models. At the end of the day, there's a sustainability issue with regard to our filmmakers and other creative sectors with regard to their projects. And then there's a need for us to actually create more spaces for creative and innovative ideas, to be able to ensure that we have access to new technologies and perhaps access to the global value chain. The DTI, together with its partner and stakeholders, are poised to actually create these creative innovation centers. And once we are able to do this, we will see that the advancement of research and training lab for for example, in film making, together with how they're able to include our young and the youth to be able to follow suit in terms of how they were embrace technology and demonstrate it for creative services other than filmmaking. And I think hand-holding programs, we've seen that there are also some issues with regard to the lack of talents that actually will actually help the film industry and all other creative industries to accelerate. And all of this Kong Tof, we're happy that doing the roadmaps and consultations and the workshops are in the country for the year, we're able to increase economic and employment contribution of the Philippine creative industries. And if we start the case study of the film industry, I think all of these problems and constraints and the proposed government intervention through DTI as the chair of the Philippine Creative Industries Development Council will be happy to move the expected outcome of having economic recovery and growth within the Philippine creative industry. As I close this short presentation, Kong Tof, we will be presenting next time the statistics and the data that we have gathered for a 6-month period of our film industry study. And we're just checking it again with the Philippine Statistics Authority. We're currently having a memorandum of agreement being drafted, and it's under the final stage. And we hope that the PSA colleagues will confirm the signing of that. That will actually give us more information and intelligence and market insights, not only for the film industry, because we understand, Kong Tof, when we're studying the entire film industry, a lot of creative sectors are also complementarily and supplementarily helping the sector. Thank you, Kong Tof.
All right, thank you so much, Assistant Director Jodan Darong. Just for the information of the body, so he presented an overview of the Malikaing Pinoy program. This is DTI's response to the law that we passed in the previous Congress, enacted shortly after the President's SONA in July 26. And from the recent budget hearings that we've had, both in the lower house and the Senate, we were able to realign a total of 360 million to be able to implement the first tranche of the Malikaing Pinoy program, of course, on the way to our 2030 goal of becoming the #1 creative economy in all of ASEAN. Also, months ago, prior to the success of the Metro Manila Film Festival, which was so heartening to know, a lot of film producers reached out to our office. They were so hard-pressed, problematic, didn't really understand what the market was looking for post-pandemic in terms of the kinds of films that they would watch, or just any kind of data that could guide producers with regards to the films that they could actually fund. And so we reached out to DTI and commissioned a market study for both film and the performing arts. So that's the one that Assistant Director Jodan was talking about. And we're excited to know that the study has been completed, it's being finalized, and will be presented to us in the coming weeks. So we look forward to that. And the third is the roadmap, which we also funded again through the intervention of then Speaker Lord Velasco in previous Congresses. So we're also looking forward to the findings of the roadmap being presented to us in the committee. All right, so now we'll move on to is NCCA with us?
Mr. Chair, it's Kiko Benitez.
Yes.
Is it possible for me to just ask a DTI moving forward, in case it wasn't part of their data? It would be very interesting to the committee, I feel, if in fact the history, even just of the number of films produced per year, can be logged and charted over the long history, given that part of the resolution of DS Villar has to do with returning to the golden age. So some kind of comparison as a kind of a benchmark target in terms of number of films, right? To return us to the time when perhaps we were one of the largest film producers in the world, might be worthwhile to know. Just a manifestation, Mr. Chair, to DTI.
All right. Thank you, Kong Kiko. Assistant Director Joe Dan, kindly take note.
We'll be
Maybe the
working
FDCP would have.
Yes, FDCP po, Kong Tof.
Yeah, FDCP might have that data. Sorry, Direct Carlitos. Is it possible to have access to the text of Assistant Director Joe Dan's speech that he or you just delivered? Yes, actually, this hearing is published on the Facebook page of the House of Representatives, so you can totally rewatch it over and over again.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, for reference. Actually, I do have some follow-ups for Assistant Director Jodan, but I'll just get to it after all the resource persons are done with their presentations. Again, ComSec is NCCA with us or no?
Mr. Chair, no, that from NCCA.
Who is the chairman of the National Committee on Film? Were they not invited? Okay, kindly tell them to follow, if not attend in the next hearing. Next, we have from the Film Academy of the Philippines, Mr. Manuel Morfe. Sir Manny, you have the floor.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Manny Morfe from the Film Academy. I am just the OIC of this institution, and we're working on everything that we will be recognized by the whole industry because at the moment we are being I would say neglected by other agencies, especially by the office of some of where we have an oversight. So we are working on everything in order that the Film Academy will be recognized by everybody. But we are very happy that I was invited to attend this meeting for the first time, and I'm listening so much in order to learn everything about the creative industry and what we can do for the industry itself.
All right. Thank you, Sir Manny.
Thank you also.
Sorry, just to clarify, Film Academy of the Philippines is under the Office of the President?
Well, somehow, as you have said earlier, we are a quasi-government, but some things has to be polished still in order to for us to be to attain our complete recognition by other agencies.
Okay. Perhaps you could maybe we'll propound some clarificatory questions later on.
Yes,
thank you, Sir Manny.
Yes, thank you very
All
much.
right. Okay. So before you proceed, I just want to acknowledge also Congresswoman Arlene Brosas. Happy New Year, Kong Arlene. All right.
Happy New Year. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, now we'll move on to Attorney Klein Alvar from the Cultural Center of the Philippines.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the official statement of the CCP so far is the CCP supports the proposed resolution and pledges assistance in the effort to promote the revival of Philippine cinema. As one of the institutions involved in film appreciation and promotion through its membership and in the Film Development Council of the Philippines, and as one of the organizers of the very successful Cinemalaya Philippine Independent Film Festival, the CCP has been part of efforts to encourage the production of outstanding film, particularly by new filmmakers, some of which have garnered international acclaim and won awards in prestigious film festivals. It is our hope that the effort to look into the conditions of the Philippines film industry will result into more governmental support, including funding and subsidies. In this light, We hope that the evaluation and grading system provided for in RA 9167 that created the Film Development Council of the Philippines, in which was intended to provide awards and incentives to outstanding Filipino film, may also be reviewed and looked into. So we thank the House Committee on Culture and Arts for inviting us to participate in today's hearing.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Klein. All right. So now we'll move on to our last two presenters. We have one from the SEAP ComSec. Who will be speaking on behalf of SEAP?
That is not represented, Mr. Chair.
Huh?
They are not around po. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, they are very essential in this conversation. Who did we reach out to, or did we ask for help from anyone?
We wrote a letter to them, Mr. Chair, and nobody confirmed it. So let's follow up, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Let's make sure that they attend the next hearing.
Noted, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. And maybe you can ask help from the resource persons from the private sector to invite SEAP to participate. We'll move on to the last presenter before we go on to Q&A. This will be the Interguild Alliance for Film. You have the floor.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Patty
Hi.
Lapus, representing the Interguild Alliance. For those who are not aware of our group, the Interguild Alliance, we formed during the height of the pandemic, and the active workers in the industry wanted to ensure that we have we have adequate health and safety protocols on set as we try to navigate working through the pandemic. Part of our inner group included in our membership are the following guilds: League of Filipino Actors or Actor, Soundspeed Philippines, representing the sound personnel, sound staff, Lupon ng Pilipinong Cinematograpo, representing the cinematographers. We also have the Filipino Screenwriters Guild, representing screenwriters. We have the Guild of Assistant Directors and Script Supervisors. We have the Production Design Guild of the Philippines. We also have Filipino Film Editors, Directors Guild of the Philippines Incorporated. We have the Philippine Independent Producers Group. I think the most relevant Production Designers Circle of the Philippines. I think our most relevant accomplishment was creating the protocols that initiated the Joint and Administrative Order for film productions. This was created together with the MPPA, with the Film Development Council of the Philippines, and the Commercial Production Houses Group, who are doing ads. And most recently, the IGA has partnered with Q Cinema in terms of a COVID assistance fund. This fund is what we use to help the different guilds as they try to formalize themselves. This includes also now the North Luzon Cinema Guild. We basically helped everyone in terms of acquiring HMO cards, some educational workshops, like the cinematographers conducted a workshop for gaffers with an internationally acclaimed gaffer to help train the gaffers we have in the Philippines. I think those are our most significant accomplishments to date, and we are more than willing to work with your office going forward as to how we can further improve the industry. I have one of my colleagues here, Paolo Villiluna. Would you like to add anything?
Go ahead, Paolo.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not on video. It's a bandwidth thing. If I can just add regarding to the role of the Interguild Alliance, recently the Interguild Alliance has become the de facto network of active guild members and film workers in the country. However, we would like to underline that we are a private sector network of industry guilds. But nonetheless, we have become the de facto network of actual film workers. Most of the film workers na naggumawa ng mga organization at guilds is actually network member of the Interguild Alliance. So we feel like there's much that this group can actually contribute to the discussion, given that since all are active film workers, they actually represent the current dilemmas and problems of the film industry.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much, Paolo. And I understand the DGPI recently held an election. So congrats to the new board of directors. Tama ba?
Yes, Chair. We recently had our election and we have a new board. We're going through transition right now. But definitely we will be continuing our programs and we'll reach new heights po.
And congrats to the previous board of directors for all the work that you did. We're truly grateful for all the support that you extended through all the many hearings that we conducted during the pandemic and even before that. So thank you, Paolo and Direk Carlitos. All right. So I got a message from the chat. We also have Q Cinema International Film Festival and the Quezon City Film Development Commission with us, of course, in the person of Ed Lejano. So Ed, you have the floor before we open the floor for Q&A.
Okay. Thanks, Chair Toff. And it's my great pleasure to be part of this session. And it's my first time. I'm also here in behalf of DGPI and as Festival Director of Q Cinema International Film Festival and the QC Film Development Commission. We recently celebrated our 10th year anniversary. And so we'd love to share our experiences in future sessions for this. And as mentioned by Patty Lapus of IGA, we would just like to share that we donated to IGA during the COVID duration, and we've been giving grants to short films and feature films in our 10-year existence. And we're looking forward to continuing this endeavor in our next 10 years. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Ed. Thank you for what you guys do for the film industry. All right, so now we're going to proceed to Q&A before we move on to the second topic. Unfortunately, I don't think we were able to cover much in terms of like the value chain. We are really relying on the FDCP and the DTI to be able to do that. So perhaps that will be in the next session. It'll probably be a longer session than necessary, but that's totally fine. But we do have questions from the members to some of the resource persons. So we'll start with Congresswoman Stella Kimbo.
Good morning. Sorry,
Good
I can't turn
morning.
on my video. Okay.
That's okay.
Chair, my question is for DTI.
Yes.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to commend the DTI for undertaking this study. It's a very, very important study to basically set the baseline of our film industry. So obviously we need to know where we are today in order to be able to propose the right interventions for the moving forward. So, and I understand that the DTI is ready to present statistics by next week. So I suppose that they're probably in the later stages of the study. So I have a few questions on the methodology. So first of all, what is I know that you're still working on defining the scope of the industry, but obviously there's a working definition. May we know what the working definition is? Like what do you consider in the downstream as well as the upstream?
Jodan.
One moment. Yeah, thank you for the question. The working definitions is yet I think the value chain is it for the film industry
Yes, sir.
Yes,
madam?
that's what she
So, kasi,
meant.
well, the reason for why I'm asking is because, I mean, we're so lucky to have all of these resource persons with us this morning. So if there are questions that need to be validated, I mean, I guess, we can take advantage of that.
I don't have ready answer for the moment. Comstella, allow us to get back to you for the next meeting if that would be okay.
Walang parang general, lang na, okay, ang considered lang is really downstream, meaning yung mga production houses, etc., etc. Walang ganon.
As of the moment, the film production industries is because we're looking at the Philippine Standard Industry Classification Code 5913. It talks about the motion picture, video, and television, and it talks also about the post-production activities, including the distribution activities and projection activities within the motion picture category. Stella.
Okay, so mostly post-production. Production itself and post-production. So mukhang yung pre-production, have you included
kulang.
those? Yun ang kulang pa.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Basically, when we look into the film production industries, it's more of a story of how the constructing value and the market for the film has been considered to be within that value chain. And you're correct, Comstella. Much has been given attention on the post-production and the distribution, not much on the creation, ideation, and even in the manipulation and production.
Yes, but I suppose you will attempt to include also the value added of our upstream. Kasi marami yun, right? There are many establishments in the design sector, right? That obviously would be used as very important inputs into production. Like, for example, costume design. Of course, even our makeup artists and all that, right? They all contribute
Movie
to the value
posters.
added. Absolutely, right? So please look into that when you talk to the PSA.
Okay. Yes.
Please include that in the methodology. I know it's not as straightforward because that would also mean having to ask special rider questions for the next round of surveys, like those in the upstream. Like, kunwari, some design establishment, right? Like, I suppose you will need to have rider questions, like whether they have clients particularly involved in film production, and that would be good for moving forward. Okay. So please look into that.
Yeah, because when we endeavored to actually look into the employed persons by occupation groups that is related to the film production, the study was from 2000. The data we use is 2016 to 2020. And I could remember that there were even stories about the employed persons in the graphic and multimedia designers. And you're correct, even the film stage and related directors and producers will also have to be checked on, other than the actors and artistics and cultural associate professional that are not elsewhere classified within the Philippine Statistics Authority mechanism. We've also looked into the statistics on broadcasting and audio visual technicians, and even to the extent of the tailor dressmakers, and I think the 4 years were also, and hatters were also taken, and the photographic products machine operators. These were done based on the labor force survey. However, the data is not yet updated. So you're correct to say that really have to push our work towards having the official statistics and the data, because what we have here in the case of the employed persons by occupation groups related to film production is also somehow incomplete to begin with. That's why inference and some statistical analysis cannot be done. But rest assured that we're closely working with the PSA, Madam Stella.
All right, thanks. That's very reassuring. My second question has to do with how you measure demand. Because obviously, we need to be globally competitive. And right now, you have platforms like Netflix, etc. How are we able to measure that? I believe it's at this point in time, it's obviously easier to have an understanding of the supply side, but obviously we need to also to assess the demand side, particularly like global demand for locally produced films. How are you going about that?
Yeah, for the initial round of the study, we're completing the domestic demand is specifically for film services. Stella, allow me to look into the film services only. Is considered to be a function of income, and I think the share of the recreational expenditure on cultural services tends to be larger in higher income deciles than in the lower income deciles. So, but however, there seems to seems to be a shift in the expenditure pattern of Filipinos for films after 2015. In our initial data, the data shows that the lower income decile tends to have higher expenditures on cultural services, let alone film. And one explanation that the study has provided is that there's a relatively inexpensive cost and numerous options for available materials through internet, and which allows the income group to reduce their expense. I think based on our initial value chain analysis, it shows that there's a limited linkages of the film industry with some other sectors, and there's a problem mainly when highlighting one of the major concerns on professional services. And I think the presence of the non-accounted freelance and entrepreneurs within the film industry is also a concern. The digitalization of film industry, for instance, has also resulted, as we all know, online sales segment of movie distribution. We've seen initially that the revenue and the user significantly dropped in 2020 and 2021, although foreign films had actually shown a spike in terms of revenue. So we look at the demand per se based on income function, yet Comstella, but there's a move to actually look into other factors that determines the demand for film is specific.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for looking into domestic demand, and that's a usual spending analysis. Pero sa tingin ko, you need to look at alternative measures because they're mostly. I mean, you want to know, for example, performance of our films in Netflix, things like those, and those are somehow available through other algorithms, not the usual way that we understand demand. So tingin ko, maybe you should get in touch with some of our stakeholders here, because for sure they have their own way of tracking demand for what they locally produce. Tingin ko importante to really have a measure of global demand for our local films, because that is really the aspiration. We want to be the best, at the very least in the short term, in the ASEAN. So tingin ko dapat i-gear din natin yung methodologies natin towards that strategic objective. And of course, from the perspective of government, dun tayo papasok di ba? Paano natin tutulungan para maging mas globally competitive tayo? So there.
Thank you for that guidance po, Madam
Yes.
Stella. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kong Stella. Perhaps Jodan, you can also work with the Film Development Council because they have relationships with all the film commissions across the world. They would have access to all that, market intelligence, and also opportunities for our creative services output to be exported, as shared to us also by Sec Paul earlier, opportunities in China. And when I was in Bali in September for the Creative Economy Conference, there was also an area of cooperation on film that was forged between the Philippines and Indonesia. So
It's well noted.
very, very,
Thank you.
Yeah, very very good points from Kong Stella. And we look forward to a closer synergy between DTI and FDCP, especially now that they're attached to you. All right. Kong Kiko, did you have any questions or any of the other members who are present here this morning?
I'm okay, Mr. Chair. Just waiting for the study to be finished.
Yes, thank you. Kong Richard, Kong Nika. Okay, maybe just a suggestion also. So one of the earlier sharings that you had, Jodan, was a pain point with regards to identifying who belongs to the film industry. So it's very opportune that the Interguild Alliance is here and the Film Development Council of the Philippines is here. So maybe you can coordinate with them before the next hearing, which is next week. If you have a list already of all the different jobs and occupations in the film industry, and maybe it can be vetted by them because they would know, they can fill in the blanks if there are possibly some occupations that you missed out on.
Okay.
Ayan, from Patty. If DTI needs to get in touch with our active film workers or production houses, we can help so they can gather the data they need. But I think most of our workers are already registered with FDCP's national registry. So, yes. But I think in terms of getting in touch with specific individuals, you can call that from the film registry. But with regards to identifying the occupations, maybe that's something that IGA can help out on, as well as the FDCP, knowing like who are the people in this neighborhood of film, both and also in the upstream and downstream, as mentioned by Kong Stella. Kong Richard, do you have any questions, clarifications from any of the stakeholders? Are you good? Okay. So as shared earlier by Kong Stella, obviously our physique codes need to be updated. We look forward to being able to do that with a satellite account that will be created as a consequence of the law that we passed. Again, reiteration of Kong Kiko's point of number of films produced per year. This is a question maybe for the stakeholders as well as the FDCP if they're able to answer. Looking at the text of the resolution of Deputy Speaker Camille Villar, she spoke about the golden age of Philippine cinema. So could you just talk about the golden age, when that was, why it was, and how can we go back to a golden age, and what would it take to go back to golden age? Is it the number of films produced or number of awards won or number of income generated? Anybody. I see Direct Joey turning on his camera, and then Direct Carlitos, go ahead.
No, I'll go ahead.
First.
I'll go ahead, Carlitos. Okay. Well, there were two golden ages. Okay. The first one was during the time of Manuel Conde, Gerardo de Leon, and Lamberto Avellana, and that was when the directors finally found their voices, and the Philippines was able to penetrate an audience which is much larger than the limitations of our territory. Meaning, we were recognized abroad. These were the first directors who were able to cross the borders and to show that there is Philippine cinema at that time. And the second golden age was during the time of Broca and Bernal and Marino Diaz-Abaya and Mario de los Reyes. And this was this was during the 80s, okay, and it ended in the 90s. And again, what was asserted was the individuality of the producers' vision as well as that of the filmmakers. I'd like to address the question which was asked before regarding what would bring us to the Oscars. It's not a matter of getting there. It's a matter of being able to be given the opportunity to do the works which are Oscar worthy. And I think at this point, what is important is more than just going to the Oscars, it's the survival of the industry. And the industry can only survive if there can be diversity in the kind of products that we create. And the diversity of products that we create can only come about if the producers are given the opportunity to do works outside the usual mold, the usual templates, which tend to limit the kind of materials we make within our insular territory. I think the DGPI and Carlitos will agree that there was a time that we were all over the film festivals. Okay, this was in the 80s. We were in Toronto, we were in Berlin, we were in Venice, and somehow this has been diminished only to a handful of filmmakers. Okay, which could eventually lead to yet another golden age, and this is through Love Diaz and through Brillante Mendoza. Okay, when they're able to penetrate Cannes, Venice, etc. How can we achieve that next golden age? Oh God, at this point, we really, really, really need government support. And that government support goes beyond lip service, but then a recognition of the real problems, which saddle not only the film workers, but most especially the film producers. And now I will speak on behalf of the FDCP. The FDCP is also making various programs or shaping various programs, which would eventually fuel give incentives, okay, to producers to produce again. The DTI will eventually find out the major drop in the number of films, okay, especially after 2019. The COVID facilitated the drastic drop in film production. And right now, just to inform the DTI, most of the productions being done by our studios are no longer geared towards cinema, but geared towards various platforms like Amazon Prime and Netflix. If you make a close study, okay, of the recently concluded Manila Film Festival, Metro Manila Film Festival, you'll find out that 3 films made money and 5 did not. And these 5 suffered drastically. Now the question is, before we can reach that golden age, we have to keep the industry alive. I think that is the greater imperative right now. Before we think of the Oscar, we first have to refuel the industry to make the producers and the audience excited again to watch Philippine movies. And this can only be done through diversity. COVID changed the geography and the topography of entertainment drastically, not only in the Philippines, but worldwide. And we need to adjust, we need to adapt our policies towards addressing the problems which were brought about by COVID. That's all. Thank you.
Direct Joey, sorry. Before you move on to Direct Carlitos, I just want to clarify. So, when we say diversity is like the number one imperative to be able to ensure the sustainability and survival of the industry, is it diversity of content and then throwing everything against the wall and hoping that something will stick with the audiences? Because obviously it's a creative service that needs to be consumed by audiences through membership and streaming platforms and buying tickets to the cinema now that people are going back to the cinema. So what do you mean by diversity in terms of content, and how do you ensure that that diversity is actually appreciated by the audience given what they look for in films?
Okay, let me break it down again to 3 points, Kongtov. Okay, firstly, diversity, diversity in content. Producers have to stop thinking in terms of Philippine audience as the world, because there is the world which is the real audience. Okay, and as long as we are very insular in the kind of contents that we design, then we will only remain within the parameters of our territory, and we are actually losing the bigger market. Okay, is there anything wrong with doing movies specifically for Filipino audiences, for the alleged CDE audiences which have very limited taste and sophistication? No, there is nothing wrong with that, but that is all that you are going to get. But as we have come to realize, with the advent of the internet, the world has become the greater market. Okay, and if we want Filipinos to achieve that golden age, we have to think not only of our country but of the world. But let me clarify myself. I do not mean that we make films for Europeans or for Americans. We make Filipino films which achieve greater universality in terms of content. Secondly, we also have to address the problems as to why less people are watching movies now. And well, Kong Tof, you already know the problem of taxation. But another extra added layer is the cost of watching movies now. At nearly 400 pesos a ticket, which can be justified, okay, by our theater owners because of overhead and et cetera, again brought about by COVID. At 400 bucks, Presi and Juan cannot afford to watch movies anymore. Okay, if you're a minimum wage owner at 400 bucks a ticket, you know, and with transportation and with food, it's getting to be a luxury to watch movies in cinema, and you would rather wait for it to go into streaming, which leads me to the third point. Imbes sila manood ng pelikula sa sinihan, they would rather wait for it to stream. Where, you know, at the cost of 500 pesos a month or 100, even 150, they can wait for a month and they could still watch that film, okay, on a streaming platform. Having said all this, the problem is not only a burden of the film worker, but it is a bigger problem of the film producer as to what kind of work will they do. And again, just to reiterate, most of our producers right now are creating content not for cinemas, but for streaming platforms. I hope I answered
Thank
the
you.
question. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah, very well answered. Thank you, Direct Joey. All right, Direct Carlitos, you now have the floor.
I think as far as your question on golden age, I mean, I'd like to extend that period to earlier to the 1970s up to until the end of the decade. But there are generally two definitions of that golden age. I think it's one is basically the kind of the quality of the films produced, which is kind of like an explosion of really quality of great of wonderful films came out in the 70s. Broca Bernal, Celso Castillo, all those guys, and the Metro Manila Film Fest. The December Film Fest was really a celebration of really good films at that time. I mean, there was a greater proportion of good films during throughout the film fest during that period, and then later on, I think the other thing that we should keep in mind when we talk about golden age is also the number of films that were produced. As far as I recall, so as far as I would say basically the festival participation, the quality films, and then the participation in international film festivals, basically that had started in the 50s, but that kind of like exploded in the 70s and went all the way to until the present. No, but basically 70s through the 90s, and then there was a third burst of also because of indie films that would be the early 2000s. So I think that one thing I remember lang from something that I came across some papers of the Film Academy of the Philippines during the time when Leo Martinez was Director General, is that he showed us a table of the years, the calendar of the years on the progress of film, the quantity of films that were produced, the output of the film industry. Before 1994, we're producing more than 250 films. And maybe it was going to about 300. 1994, after 1994, we dropped way below 200. So I've been wondering about that. What happened in 1994? Well, one of the things that happened then was the Manila Film Festival scandal. So that I suppose, I mean, it's just my conclusion that kind of turned off a lot of people. A lot of the audiences because the illusion was broken. The dream was broken about films and filmmaking and all that. So that was 1994. The second drop was the second major drop that I remember from that paper was in 1997, which was the Asian crisis, economic crisis, and so we dropped from 1997 beyond that. I think we were down to about 60 films maximum And then it just got lower and lower, and then until now. But now I think with the advent of some of these indie film festivals, Cinemalaya, Q Cinema, etc. So there got to be a niche market, and it kind of like became influential. So nagkaroon ng a new excitement, a new generation over films once again. And I don't know the numbers now, how many films are being produced now, but there seems to be ano ba to, flurry of activity, and bumalik yung mga exports to film festival, more adventurous films, and then more experimental, even within the mainstream, and they're traveling more widely than before, than since 1997. So those are the I think just to that's the history as I recall it. But I do agree that I also agree that it's kind of like urgent these days. The situation is kind of dire because I believe that the COVID has driven, probably one of the things that COVID has done. It has driven audiences to more to streaming, and so it's like 2 years of was it been 2 years? Has it been 2 years where people were kind of like locked at home and then been exposed to really a lot of films from all over the world through the streaming platforms. So it has kind of like basically. I would say that our films will just really have to compete with the world, and that's the reality of it. And we do need that support from everybody and from government. I think that it's important that we. One of the things that has changed is really the outlook of the audience. So it's gotten to be more I guess more broad, but they've seen a lot more different kinds of films from all over. So it's interesting, this last Manila Film Festival. What I really find interesting is the when we're talking about the diversity here, is that the top 2 films it couldn't be more diverse, couldn't be more different from each other. The first the top grosser is The Leader, which is a more on the more independent, it's kind of like it got to be commercial because a lot, many people saw it, and it is the top grosser. So, but basically it's still an independently guided voice. And then the second placer, which was the one with Vice Ganda, is basically the mainstream voice. So those are the top 2. So it's interesting. So when you're asking, saan na ba kami pupunta and all of that, I think it's an indication that the audience is there for both, and both were supported. So I think that's a wide range to play in. That's a wide field to play in, and so I think that's the good thing. I like that I'm optimistic about the industry in that sense, because the MMFF just proved that you can have. Basically, the audience is willing to see a whole range of films and is willing to support a whole range of films. It's still not the same level as the pre-pandemic levels, which is close to where the MMFF is grossing close to $1 billion. Now, the latest, from what I understand, the MMFF has grossed about 500 million, maybe to be confirmed by the producers here, but that's what I understand. So but I look at it as it's the glass is half full, and I think there is room for optimism. But I do believe that the industry definitely needs government support, and there are examples from that we can follow from all around the world. One that I keep on mentioning is the CNC Center, the CNC in France, where taxes from all films are go to the CNC, and they are given as automatic support for all French films that are being for all French films. At least 6% of taxes go to all French films that are produced for that year. And if the CNC likes your likes your proposals, they can even raise your tax support to more than 6%. I believe the last I understand is it can go as high as 11%. But that's all taxes from from local and international films goes into government, and it is plowed back only to the local cinema. So I think things like that could help in having producers take more risks in producing diverse films, because they don't the loss or profit risk is not carried by them alone. I mean, they are not investing as it's not all their investment. I mean, some of it is there's government support for some of the expenses. So malaking tulong yon. So yes, we do need the support, but I'm optimistic that that certainly this industry and now with all of these Dali De Leons and Soliman Cruz and John Arcilla and all these actors and all the films that are traveling to Berlin, Venice, and all of that, I think this industry is definitely worth government's investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Direk Carlitos. Before we move on to Paolo, I just have a few follow-up questions to Direk Carlitos. First, okay, so obviously we've had 2 or 3. Is it 3 golden ages?
I don't really
two official and two official and
really
one
that Broca
sort of.
Bernal, all that, and then it goes to I would say the 90s, the 2000s, because of the
So which body determines if the Philippines is some kind of in a golden age of cinema? Is that an international body?
No. I think
is it self-proclaimed?
I think it's self-proclaimed by critics. I think it's self-proclaimed by people in the industry, by film buffs. Yeah, I mean, basically, but it is generally the quantity of films or the participation in the prestige that it has gotten locally and abroad. So I think those are the general guidelines for when you're talking about golden age. But yeah, it really depends on who's saying golden age. If you talk to the critics, that's one thing, or the academe, that's one thing. But yeah, I don't think there's really no handbook that tells you what it is.
Okay, so it's not like a Michelin star situation where it has to be rated by a panel of judges, jurors. Okay. And then there are indicators such as number of films produced, number of films that participate in film festivals, and etc. Okay. And then so
also the number of the hits, the number of the income. So that those are various indicators. It really depends on who you talk to and what would be the golden age of cinema. It might be the times when people are making millions or much more than what they invested. So it really depends on who you talk to.
Okay. And then you mentioned that there was a study that was conducted by Leo Martinez during his time in the Film Academy.
Yes, and I don't know. There's somebody from FAP here, si Manny Morphe. I don't know if he recalls that, but there was that. I remember there was that meeting that we had, and I saw that paper where when he was still the Director General of the Film Academy, it was a paper. There was a table, and he was listing year by year the number of films that were produced, and I remember that 1994 was a benchmark, and 1997.
Okay. Perhaps Jodan, if you can get a copy of that paper, it'll be very helpful. But we'd also like to actually get a copy. So Comsec, were we able to invite Leo Martinez through Rez Cortez? Sorry, if not Comsec, Attorney Rod, I had you invite them.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will invite them for the next hearing as well.
You didn't invite them to this hearing?
No, Mr. Chair.
May I,
Okay.
Mr. Chair? Yeah, I think Mr. Leo Martinez is no longer Director General of the FAP. So I don't know if
Yes.
but they can in the staff might
No,
be
I
able to
was
check.
I was with them. I was with them at the I was with Res Cortez at the Metro Manila Film Fest Awards night, and he asked if he could participate and help out, and he said if Leo Martinez could be invited as well. Okay. And then my third final follow-up, Direct Carlitos, is okay, so interesting with this Metro Manila Film Fest, the top grosser is an indie film, an indie horror film, Deleter. And then followed by a big studio film, headlined by Vice Ganda. What is Bandits? Partners in Crime.
Partners.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is it Chambahan? I mean, is there a way? I know Deleter is a Viva movie. Okay. So it's not an indie film. It's a film by
I would say it's it's produced by a mainstream producer. Yes, it is, and but I would say that it is it's still not your usual mainstream commercially voiced film. There's some personal voice going on there. So I would say it's parang siguro mainstream indie ganun. It's not quite all out indie na on the edge, but it's I would say it's a more indie than the usual mainstream.
From Direct Joey, it's a millennial work. Okay, so all right. I think it really goes back to I suppose the study that was mentioned by Assistant Director Jodan earlier, and how at least they're able to get some kind of local market intelligence going through the study, and at least ascertaining what is the audience looking for, how can this data be used by producers as a guide for what kind of films they can churn out, but of course taking into consideration what Direct Joey mentioned, that there has to be a push towards diversity to be able to expand also the market, and also elevating the market. Sorry, Direct Joey, is it okay if I recognize Paolo first?
No, this is just a comment. This is just a comment
Okay.
what Carlito said about the success of Deleter. Deleter catered to the audience that is capable of paying 400 pesos. Okay, this is a millennial work, which is about a content editor, okay, who witnesses, etc., etc. So makikita natin na it is really very audience specific, and it is the kind of audience that can afford the ticket, and that is why it became a bestseller. Added to the fact that it won all the awards.
Sorry, so the tickets to Metro Manila Film Festival were also in the 400s? 400 pesos.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
385. Okay. So, we've heard arguments in previous hearings about content is king. So if the content is kingly, people will spend for it. But there's also arguments about like the spending capacity and capability of a market, and being able to hit a critical mass of watchers who, given like a specific price point that's a little bit more affordable. So I suppose this is being taken into consideration in the market study. Jodan? Yes. How much the audience can afford and all of that. Okay. All right. Paolo, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Kong. Thank you, Direk Joey and Direk Carlitos. They're true insights. I'd just like to add some insights then, Kong. Una, sagutin ko lang yung Golden Age Barometer. It's really a critical consensus of critical history. Walang Michelin star, walang statistical barometer talaga. But to answer that, we actually went through a third golden age nung wave ng independent movement. But then because independent cinema siya, it wasn't given mainstream recognition. Okay, given that, Gusto ko lang i-underline sa binanggit kanina ni Direk Joe and Direk Carlitos. To be honest, hindi tayo nagkukulang in terms of global recognition. In fact, for a book I'm writing, I'm doing the statistics of all the recognition all throughout the years. Sobrang pataas ang recognition natin globally. In fact, in all the A-list film festivals, we've actually won 37 times already, not counting the nominations, not counting all the other North American film festivals. We're talking here of the A-list European film festivals only. So in terms of recognition, we're actually on the high. In fact, simula year 2000, incrementally, every year we've been rising the number in terms of recognition by almost 10%. Like pataas ang ating global recognition. So to underline, at this point, actually, the creative input of the industry is actually pretty good and healthy. Right now, we are at a point of what Direk Joey said kanina is really survival. On a 3-point thing, we now need help in production, in film education, and the market. So, again, to stress what Direk Joey and Direk Carlito said, we're actually in dire need of assistance from the government na. In fact, Direk Joey might be able to help us explore how the Korean government was able to input money in the Korean industry, no? But to underline lang ulit, creatively, we're actually on a high and we are very, very healthy.
Okay, thank you, Paolo. All right, so very interesting data point that you shared. We've won 37 times in A-list European festivals. But okay, so obviously that the meat of the resolution filed by DS Camille is really on how to win an Oscar. And so our group of legislators was recently contacted by the group of Dolly De Leon if we could sort of pledge some kind of amount that will support and increase her chances on maybe nabbing an Oscar nomination. And it was made aware to me. I was made aware by Liza Dino during her tenure in Film Development Council that to actually campaign for the Oscars requires money, resources, investments from governments in terms of ad spend, in terms of junkets, in terms of dinners and all these like mga PR. And so obviously this is something that the committee, of course, in partnership also with the Office of Secretary Paul, and the DTI and the FDCP, this is something that we're very much interested in. But what are the benefits? Are there proven benefits to bagging an Oscar? Ayan, approximately.
Definitely.
What are those benefits? Just for the information of all the members, since that seems to be the number one item on the list of this resolution that we're discussing right now, how to win an Oscar. So what are these benefits?
Offhand, I'm sure sila Direk Joey can add to this and my other colleagues here. But offhand, we have to understand that mass media is the number one communication tool pa rin in the world, no? And kung ang barometer natin of mass media is the Oscars as the number one global recognition for the film industry, that's a major thing. Once you're recognized globally in terms of cinema, no, hindi naman talent lang dito ang nare-recognize. Ang nare-recognize ay buong bansa. So this actually affects tourism. This actually affects cultural sectors. Hypothetically, let's say a Korean film gets recognized. Suddenly, you now have input of tourists going into the country, trying to figure out saan nag-shoot itong pelikulang ito. Ano yung kinain ng mga characters na to? Bakit ganito yung kultura nila? There's an added value in terms of interest and curiosity. In terms of practical numbers, I'm sure sila Direk Carlitos and Direk Joey can add to this. But in terms of global effect, malaki talaga siya na maapektuhan lahat ng sectors actually ng buong bansa. Direk Joey?
All right. Direk Joey, you're raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, Kong Tok, this just to add to what Paulo said. If we are going to use Korea as an example, and with Parasite winning the Oscars, okay, about 2 years ago, it was not an overnight thing. It took a decade to do that. It took a long-term planning on the part of Korea to sell their soft economy, to turn their popular culture into a major exportable product. It cannot be done, just overnight. But the advantages are great, not only for that specific movie that may win or be nominated for the Oscar, but of the recognition, the world recognition of Philippine cinema as a cultural force. And together with it being a cultural force, everything else comes in place, as mentioned by Paulo. There is tourism. There is even the very idea of selling your culture. I think Korea has succeeded that tremendously with K-drama, K-pop, etc., about the whole Hallyu experience. Winning the Oscar or being nominated for the Oscar is important, as long as the culture is attached to it. Because you are not only selling the movie, you are selling the culture as a potent economic force. Let me give an example. Everybody is applauding, and I am, for one, overwhelmed by the success of Dali de Leon. But isn't it sad, Chertoff, that Dali de Leon is being recognized for a Swedish movie? I mean, it took a Swedish director to discover a seemingly anonymous, ultra-talented actress to be brought into international recognition. Isn't it sad that there are more foreigners, more Europeans who have seen the movies of Love Diaz and Brillante Mendoza than Filipinos? That for me is the irony which we need to change now.
Yeah, that's a really good insight. It reminds me of other success stories in other creative industries. For example, the Piñatex. the Piñatex, the vegan leather is covered here, patented abroad. Ilang Ilang, endemic here, patented abroad. Yeah, of course, even Tama ba? Trece was animated abroad, but it's Filipino IP. But anyway, all right, thank you for that. Direct Carlitos, you're raising your hand.
Yes, thank you, Kong Tov. Yeah, I mean, it's not as if Dali de Leon has not been featured in prominently in films here before before Triangle of Sadness, because she did turn in an astounding performance also in Verdict. That was another film like 1 or 2 years ago. I can't remember when it was. It's just that it would be great if there will be support for not only for the actors that are making waves abroad, but for all these films that are featuring our actors, our stories, so that the films themselves can, we can have more of these kinds of films that speak to us, to our situation here, local situation, our local conditions, and that are also traveling abroad. So marami yun eh. And Paulo had mentioned na there's been a lot of films that have been traveling. It's just that siguro, I guess, going into this indie or mainstream thing again, I would say the Oscars is like the mainstream of mainstream of these prestige events. It's a mainstream version of these prestige events, whereas a lot of these other art film festivals are really like they're art film festivals. They're really hardcore in that way. But the Oscars would be your mainstream, and so it is influential. It's important that we get to push our stories, not just of course the talent. It's great that we have Dali de Leon, Lea Salonga, all of these people in film and theater that are being recognized internationally. But it would be even it would be fantastic if that kind of push could extend to pushing Philippine material, pushing Philippine stories, Philippine films, as has been said, Philippine culture, pushing that internationally. Yun lang. Thank you.
All right. I think what would be really helpful is to be able to, before we go to Attorney Joji, is to be able to extract some data points with regards to the ROI of winning an Oscar. Again, it seems to be the primary concern of this resolution. So we heard from Direct Joey, it costs about $2 million. Ano ba exchange rate ngayon? 60. Oh, so that's 120 million pesos that the government will spend to help our future Oscar mga push. So obviously, if we're going to be demanding that amount from the Department of Budget and Management and the economic cluster of Malacanang, then we need to be able to justify the ROI of it. And so these data points will be very helpful. If there are any studies from Direct Joey or the Film Development Council or any literature that we can comb through, it'll be very helpful to be able to justify this budgetary ask moving forward. Okay, Attorney Georgie, you are recognized.
Good morning. I just wanted to share, Kong Tof, an actual experience during the Oscar campaign. Our film in, what year was this? 2011 was Babae sa Septic Tank. And we were clueless exactly what to do because there was no actual guidance as to what can be done in an Oscar campaign. Someone suggested we had no funds to launch the campaign. So we decided to follow the suggestion of somebody who, for us to approach the PAGCOR, and PAGCOR was very generous to support us with 1 million pesos. That was the entire fund that we had to run a campaign, along with additional money from some supporters. And during our stay in Los Angeles, sometime in November and December, we realized that that money was nothing. We were just laughing at ourselves, particularly Eugene Domingo and myself, because we were bringing with us a lot of Philippine fans, you know, the pamaypay, to give away to those who would attend our screenings and our dinners. And we heard that in another venue, I will not mention the country, they were giving expensive watches and expensive wallets, which we could not compete with. And that film made it to the top 5, if I may say so. So literally, trying to win an Oscar is a massive campaign. And when we talked to our PR group, because we had to engage the services of a PR group, who was very kind and generous, because they even returned to us the $386, which was left of our money. They said that the minimum amount that we can use in a campaign would really be $2 million. That was way back in 2011. I can just imagine how that amount may have already ballooned in this day and time. And analyzing everything, the best chance that you have really is to get a foreign distributor who can distribute your film in the United States, so that people are more aware of the existence of the film, just like what happened to Parasite. We were really hoping this year we would have a chance because HBO picked up OTJ, The Missing 8, but unfortunately still, despite that, we didn't make it. So we are pleading, of course, to the government that the film that will be chosen as a submission to the foreign film category, I don't know the new name at this point, but the bottom line is it should not be left to the producer to fend for themselves. We badly need the support of the government. We cannot do it without the support of the government. No matter how many dinners we have, 10,000 pesos per plate, that will not suffice for any film coming from our country to even make a small mark in the buzz, in the Oscar buzz, unless we get the support of the government and raise enough funds to really launch a massive campaign.
Thank you for that, Attorney Georgie. Wow, pamaypay. Vis-a-vis expensive watches. So really, again, the point is proven. To launch a successful Oscars campaign, resources are needed, and the private sector cannot do it on their own. So this is something that we really have to work on. Public-private partnership moving forward.
Kong, can you imagine to get an ad lang sa Variety for your consideration?
How much is that?
$20,000. So that's already
Oh,
a million.
Okay. Sec Paul, you recognize, sir.
Yeah. I mean, I myself was a producer of an entry in, I think 2015, it was called Transit, that we got the Oscar submission. And same thing. I mean, as all the directs here were saying, is even just to hire a publicist is like in the $20,000-$40,000 range. And that's not even a guarantee for anything. No? So yeah, it will take, I think it's a campaign that we need to really study. And I think it would be also great to bring it up to whoever selects the film for the Oscars. Maybe that it also has to be some sort of in the deliberation. No? Is there support? Because I think what also in the recent past is they would just nominate a film based on, I guess, its merit or its recognition abroad, but there is really no back-end plan in terms of, the marketing push and the promotion of the film. So maybe that's something we can also take a look into. And again, public and private partnership is important. It's something maybe I can also bring up to the private sector advisory council. I know that there is going to be a topic on creative industries in one of those meetings coming. But just to backtrack a bit, and if I may say, I think to point out to direct Joey's point, and maybe the Metro Manila Film Festival. And I feel that the only reason why there's only one or two big hits is because the general public can only afford to watch one film. Or maybe two at most. So that's why the other 5 or 6 films don't get seen. Again, I understand there's been many debates and discussions about ticket prices, no? But I think that is maybe a first step that we need to take a look at, because there is really no problem with Philippine cinema for me, that there is just so much great stories out there, but nobody is watching it because of the high ticket prices. So it's like we're making a theme park, but nobody can come in because we're charging so much, right? So what's the point? So is there any chance that we can maybe move forward with discussions with cinema owners about the ticket price? 400 pesos is just the minimum, because there is transportation, there is food, etc., etc. And if you're going to bring a date, that you'll easily hit the 1,000 peso, and we all know that that's quite the luxury now for people. So it feels like we're charging ticket prices, but at the same time, people can't afford it. So what's happening? Then again, we're also competing with foreign cinema, where you have the MCUs, the Avengers of all, which I think also is a top choice. No, so I don't know. Maybe that's a good start. I don't know if it's something with DTI, but the ticket prices. No, because how can we push our own film producers if our own people can't afford to watch the films that we create? I don't know. And
right
now it's streaming, so I don't know. Maybe that's something to take a look at. Again, another thing that was drastic to me is, just look at the population of our country, right? We're at almost 100+ million. If we can get 1 million people to watch a film, that's a lot already, but we don't even get that. Imagine that we're just asking 1% of our country to watch cinema, and that's even hard to achieve. If the liter made 200+ million, divide that by 400, what's the math there? I think that's less than 1 million people. No? So where's the, maybe it is maybe the ticket prices. I don't know, at least from my perspective, also as a producer, to tell someone to watch all 8 films in the Metro is a massive feat. No. Anyway, just some insights, and of course with the Oscars, I really believe it is gonna take maybe some private help also, because it is as Direct Joy said, $2 million+. No? So anyway, just some of my insights after listening. But we need to get our Filipinos to watch cinemas. I guess if there's libreng sakay, meron bang libreng cinema? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, sa Makati may libreng cinema. if you're a senior citizen, doing Tuesday, I think, and in some cities as well. I'm curious. So who selects the films that are submitted to the Oscars? Is there a panel of judges, or is there a body?
Kong, if I may.
Yeah.
Okay, the officially recognized agency by AMPAS, the one running Oscars, is actually the Film Academy of the Philippines.
Okay.
they're actually the officiating selection committee ng AMPAS, and that can only be changed if the film sector writes a letter to AMPAS and then the AMPAS recognizes it. But at this point, the official agency is actually Film Academy of the Philippines. Just to add then, sana banggit ni Direk Paul kanina, the past 2 years, 2 years ago, FAP was not able to submit. They cited logistical reasons, and DGPI actually reacted violently to this. And then last year, when we followed up, because we were kind of worried dun sa nangyayari sa FAP submission last year, we were informed they did not have the capacity. So what we did, DGPI with other sectors took the initiative to oversee the selection committee. It was a bit late. That's why it was a bit late this year, because it was we were informed FAP was not able to do it. So we took the initiative to do it. Pero around August na yon. Ideally, by around June, July, tapos na ang deliberation. And then, Direct Paul, there were kasama sa deliberation actually ang marketing capability. Well, at least with the rules we instituted last year, no. In fact, just to inform everyone, in terms of selection, as the head organizing committee last year, we actually got a representative from FAP, FDCP, CCP, DGPI, IGA, a representative from the academe, and one prominent published film critic, because we wanted it as a selection of the whole community. It's not just the selection of one heading body or anything like that. So part of the deliberation was we actually asked all the submitters to submit a dossier, including their capability to market. In fact, our top 3 selection, they actually had publicists and they actually had foreign distribution. So we were kind of hoping because the missing 8 had HBO and Warner Brothers, but without government backing, medyo kulang pa rin siya talaga. But to answer the question, yes, it's actually under FAP, and I'm sure Mr. Manny Morfe can add to this pa. However, we need to really fix the infrastructure of the selection committee ng FAP.
Okay, and then Direct Percy also mentioned that it should be selected earlier than December, which was corroborated also by Paolo. Which leads me to actually my next question, which is for the Film Academy of the Philippines. Manny, are you still with us? Manny? Okay, all right. I see you're there. All right, so you said you're working on recognition by the industry. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
Because
what does that mean?
Well, I am just an OIC by of the academy, selected by the Board of Governors, but we need to have a rightful Director General to be given by the CCP under the Office of the President to handle FAP.
Okay, so that is appointed by Malacanang.
Yes, through the CCP. The office of CCP is the appointing office.
I see. All right. So Attorney Klein is with us.
Hello?
From the CCP.
Yeah, I'm here.
Attorney Klein, are you there?
Yes.
Hello.
Okay. So how far are we in terms of like appointing the next
For the
head of the Film Academy
It's my second
of
committee
the
already.
Philippines?
Oo nga eh.
For the information of
Saka
everybody.
yung delete ng mga penalties nila.
Attorney
That
Alvar.
needs
Oh, wait,
to be-
sorry. Richard, you need to mute. Kong Richard. Richard. All right. Sige.
Sorry,
Attorney
what was the
Alvar, you
question
have the
again?
floor.
Yeah, sorry, what was the
Okay,
question
so
again?
so basically, Sir Manny Morfe is on an OIC capacity for heading the Film Academy of the Philippines, which is quasi-government. Apparently, the head is appointed by the Cultural Center of the Philippines. So it's already January 10. And if we want to follow the ideal timeline for vetting a film that will be submitted to the Oscars, then that should be happening by June, July. As From Derek Carlitos, the campaign should start as early as late August, then if deadline is August 20. So anyway, there was mention earlier by Derek Percy of June, July. And this seems to be contingent upon the Film Academy of the Philippines. And the appointing authority for the head is the CCP. So where are we at in terms of recommendations, a short list maybe of people?
So
Is it
far
being
it's under
prepared?
review. Yeah, sorry. So far it's under review, but as soon as we get the decision regarding that, we'll forward the decision to you immediately.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need insider info as to who will be appointed. It's really more of somebody has to be appointed so the FAP can sort of organize.
Of course, we'll expedite this.
Well,
Okay.
for information of everybody, we have sent a letter to the CCP through Ms. Margie Moran requesting for such matter, but the request has not been granted as of now.
Okay.
I'll be sure to pass along the word po.
Yes, please. And then ComSec, could the committee also write the CCP to expedite the process of coming up with a short list or appointing a new head of this agency? So I mean, so Manny, besides that you are in the OIC capacity at the moment, I mean, what other reforms need to be undertaken in the Film Academy? Like you mentioned earlier that there's a need for some kind of capacity. So what do you mean by capacity? Do you get annual budget from government?
None. The funding for Film Academy, for the information of everybody, comes from the earnings of the MMFF only. We are not in any GAA, but our oversight department should be the Department of Education, in which we are also working now on it to be recognized by the DepEd. But we have not given a meeting yet by the department.
So do you have a percentage of the MMFF earnings, or do you have a set percentage, or it depends on the MMFF committee? Like, okay, this year you're getting this much money.
No. There's a certain fixed percentage of the earnings.
Okay, so how are you impacted by the 2020 and 2021 MMFF, which didn't do so well and obviously didn't earn as much money?
Well, for the info of everybody, PAP has to close office, and we did that function since for 2 years, almost 2 years, because of lack of funds, to almost nothing. We just revived the Board of Governors revived the Film Academy. We met in order to do something about this just last October. So that's why we're working on it to be recognized, as I have said earlier.
Okay, so is that the reason also why the Film Academy was not able to act on an Oscar submission in 2020 because he didn't have funds from the MMFF?
Yes, that's true.
All right. Okay.
May I make it clear, as we were talking about campaigning for the Oscar nominee to do it earlier, because the submission for film by the first week of October of each year, all finalists, all films shown from October to the following year until September. So we have to wait all the movies to come in until the month of September of the year. So we cannot do it earlier than July because there will be more films to be shown until September, and they should be included in choosing the finalists for the Oscar.
Okay, so Assistant Director Jodan, diba we also have a roadmap for film. Baka this is something that can be included in the roadmap. This is probably not part of the film study or the market study, but more in the roadmap. Parang
Absolutely.
let's craft an ideal timeline. Who are the people and stakeholders involved?
May I interrupt, Con?
Go ahead.
Time frame is given by AMPAS. It's not ours to decide on.
Which one?
The time frame of the film shown for the year that can be included to be a finalist. It's a fixed schedule given by AMPAS. All films shown from October of the present year until the September of the following year.
Okay.
If I may, Sir Manny,
go ahead.
Just to clarify, we actually don't have to wait for the films to be shown. As long as there is a booking contract, you can actually select the films already, which is what happened last year, Sir Manny. Remember, actually all the films we selected were not shown because of the pandemic. However, they provided us the booking forms, which is actually the only requirement of AMPAS. So hypothetically, we can actually choose films earlier, especially those that have won internationally already. By December, we would have known which films won in Berlin, by January, Berlin, and then by May, Cannes. All of them, they're already contenders. And as long as they have booking contracts, that will suffice. Just to clarify, guys,
Well, we had an experience from the past.
Sorry, Manny, kindly wait to be acknowledged. Go ahead, you're acknowledged.
Okay, we have POP has an experience from the past wherein we had the choices already of films to be finalists, but then 2 weeks before the end of September, there was one good movie that was to be shown. So we have to revise everything and the process has to be redone because of suggestion from other people that that particular movie must be included in the choices of films. That is why POP decided to wait until movies are shown since AMPAS requests for promotional papers, documents, and tickets and everything. If you don't have,
I'll just read.
If you don't have all
Alright.
of those, if you don't have all of those requirements, you cannot be included as a finalist.
Okay, so there are a lot of technicalities involved with this whole Oscars submission process. So maybe this is something that can be discussed offline. I'll read a message in the chat. DGPI can help spearhead discussion with AMPAS. So a new agency can be appointed that is interagency in nature. There was also something that was mentioned by Ed Lejano. CCP should spearhead the new leadership of FAP, or a resolution is needed to appoint an interagency committee for Oscar selection. So, yes, Vice Chair Richard, go ahead.
I just want to be clear. So the FAP is the authorized body to submit the nominations to Oscars, correct?
Yes,
is that
sir.
correct?
Right.
Yes.
And I'd like to know the composition of the members in selection for the nomination. Should they all be members of the FAP?
Sir, last year, when DGPI spearheaded the
Manny, sorry, Paolo, please wait to be recognized.
I'm
Manny,
sorry.
Manny, you kindly answer Kong Richard's question.
It's Film Academy's choice of who will be included in the judges to choose the representative in the international film feature.
Not necessarily members of the FAP.
Yes, no, it's within. Since we are the one assigned to send the finalists for the international feature film. We formulated years ago of how to go about it, and then it's a yearly choice of who will be sitting as judges to choose the film to be sent.
Okay, the reason why I asked is because Mr. Villaluna said that they are trying to, they're working on creating a group to do what the FAP is doing in selecting what to be submitted to the Oscars. Is that correct?
Well, I do not know from him that is his point of view, but at the moment it's only
okay. Because
it's only Pap who has the right to send the finalist film.
Yes, because my next question, Manny, will be if FAP is the authorized body to submit the nomination or selection for the Oscars, what is the group of Paulo Villaluna?
Well,
what is the personality of the group that he's creating?
Well, last year, since POP has the capacity to send a finalist for the Academy for the Oscars, they presented a letter to Film Academy asking us to permit them to do the process, to work hand in hand with the Film Academy, since we did not have funds to do so. So, and they have all the resources to do the process. We allow them to do it for themselves. But if working on being accepted as the agency to send the finalists, I do not know. That is their plan probably, but at the moment, since I am the one connected with Oscars, the selection committee, it's only me who can send or give authority to whatever film to be sent to the Oscar. Until I put that to another group or to another person, Oscar will still recognize me as the sole representative of POP.
Are you saying, Manny, that the group that Mr. Villaluna is creating has no personality to choose the?
I don't like to say it no personality, but they can collaborate with us probably or to anyone else. I really do not know.
Have they expressed it? Have they expressed, at least in writing?
It's my first time to hear all about it, honestly.
Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Chertoff.
Thank you also.
Thanks, Kong Richard. So Manny,
can we hear from Chairman? Can we hear from Mr. Villaluna?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Paolo, you're recognized. Kindly respond.
Thank you, Kong Richard. To clarify, I represent the Directors Guild of the Philippines. We're actually the biggest guild of directors in the country. Number two clarification, we have no plans to torpedo the role of FAP. It was just a proposal right now in the chat box. Then to also clarify, we actually initiated the selection last year in partnership with FAP. It was a formal, we had a MOA, it was a formal agreement between FAP and DGPI. The DGPI will handle the selection process last year since we were belatedly informed that they were not capable of sending a film last year. But to really clarify, Mr. Kong Richard and Mr. Manny, we have right now, wala kaming malicious intent to torpedo your role, Mr. Manny.
Yes, I understand that. I'm just.
We are also articulating here the need to change the infrastructure and to review and revise it, because there is a need to submit it earlier. There is a need for government support financially for the film chosen.
I have a question, Manny. So, with regards to like the selection committee for the film that will be submitted to the Oscars, is there a prescribed composition? Like how many members are they, and Is it like, oh, one academe, one director, one producer?
Well, it's somehow like that. From the time of Leo Martinez, it has been the same structure. He chooses different people from different part of the cinema, from the industry, and all people that care for the industry. There's no particular group or a regular person to do it yearly, but it is a different choice every year. As per, it comes from him and invites people from the academic industry to be part of the selection committee.
So there's no prescribed
yes
formula or composition.
Yes, none. Yes,
but as diverse as possible, basically.
Yes, correct.
And does that also include government representatives? Like, for example, the head of the Film Development Council, the head of the Cultural Center, are they also included in the selection?
Well, we did not have that yet, since I think the idea in choosing as a member of the finalists, they must be free to view all the films that can be selected as semi-finalists, things like that. So we have invited them, but they gave a representative to do so.
Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification. Actually, going back to the intervention of Sec Paul earlier, I had two other follow-up questions. So I'll move on from the selection committee. Again, this seems to be a very, very dense topic in terms of like the process of vetting. It should be an offline conversation that we can also help facilitate moving forward to connect all parties that need to be part of the discussion. Sec Paul mentioned something that I also mentioned earlier, that, you know, the price of the ticket and the capacity of the audience to actually buy a ticket, it seems that it's too high. And also, based on what Sec Paul said, a film goer can only afford to buy tickets to 2 films. And this is something that sort of resonates with me as a producer in theater, given a Ticket World study that was conducted. Apparently, only a theater goer can only afford to buy tickets to 2 productions in a year. And so if you do not grow the market, you're essentially cannibalizing a very limited market. So it goes back to SAYAP, and unfortunately they're not here. But perhaps maybe we can ask SAYAP, COMSEC, and maybe some of the stakeholders who are here present. Can we ask them to disaggregate the costs incurred, to unbundle the costs that sort of, you know, add up to this 400 peso ticket? Because obviously there's the amusement tax there, and maybe there are other taxes. And obviously we're working also to reduce the amusement tax through legislation that has been filed previously and then again in this Congress. But what are those other costs, and why is it that expensive? How can we bring it down? Maybe SAYAP can sort of guide us through this. If not SAYAP, maybe some other people who might know. Attorney Joji, you're raising your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, I messaged the SAYAP group, and they said that they did not receive an invitation for today. They're not aware that there's a hearing today. So I informed them that there are 2 more hearings, one for next Tuesday and the following Tuesday, and they will attend.
Great, thank you. Comsec Dale, baka mali yung email.
The email address that we had was just info@sayap.org. So it's a generic email address.
Okay.
We'll try to, yes.
Well, all right. So, I mean, we have access to the captains of the industry. So we can just message them for support or help to make sure that our hearing goes smoothly moving forward. Thank you. Again, important that we unbundle the cost to see where government can intervene in how to lower the cost of this ticket. Because in terms of like subsidy, I don't know if we have the resources to subsidize tickets to films, but maybe the amusement tax and I don't know, like incentives maybe to the cinemas in terms of like, tax exemptions. I don't know. Okay, so unbundle the film cost and also, yeah, that's it. Sorry, I was actually messaging with Vincent. And so now I'd like to recognize him. I'm really sorry for the delay. But if you're still with us, Vincent, you're recognized to give your intervention. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kong. I have parang some opinion regarding the current state of the industry. I think yung industry is alive. Mali po na sinasabi na it's dying. Nabago lang ang paraan ng distribution o pagpapaabot ng content. The lines of distribution have been blurred between yung streaming and yung cinema. So when we produce content, hindi kailangan ipalabas sa sine, andyan ang streaming. So kaya naman natin yon. I think yung in-emulate natin na Korean model, kayang ma-achieve, matagal, pero dapat masimulan natin. And nagsimula sila, I think, 25, 30 years ago with their screen quota model, kung saan required at least half of the year that there's a local film being shown. There's also parity in terms of marketing, wherein the trailers can be run in the cinema side by side with the Hollywood studios. So lahat yan should be in place. Hindi mahirap i-shortcut kung sabihin natin, next year, dapat pantay na tayo with Hollywood. It took them 15, 20 years before they reach the stage where they can really export their content. Yung presyo ng pag noon ng sine sa sinehan is mataas nga yung 400. Pero if you look at streamers, whether it be local or global streamers, it's at, I think, $3, 150 pesos. So affordable naman siya. Siyempre, ang concern lang doon yung access sa broadband. And I think that's another topic. As for yung indie films getting the exposure internationally, I think ang unang dapat tignan is yung domestic market opportunities for indie films. Yung Parasite, which has been cited as an example of success, if you note, has been produced by CJ. CJ is one of the biggest corporations in Korea. Hindi siya ginawa ng isang indie house. So, kasi I think madali gumawa ng pelikula. Ang pinakamahirap ay maparating ito sa mass audience. And you need a studio to be able to distribute that, to market that dito and globally. So I think yun. And then another concern is yung parang nawala ng revenue stream yung FDCP para makatulong sa mga producers. Nawala yung subsidy ng amusement tax, yung rebate na tinatawag. I remember before, yung ECP was parang in a way successful when they were running that program, and it was through the offices yata of the Department of Tourism, kasi tinitignan siya as a propagator of culture and arts through para magdala ng tourism, both syempre domestic tourism and international tourism. So I think yun if we can have parity sa laban dito sa domestic market in terms of being able to get the support of both government and private sector, lalo na sa mga cinemas, I think kaya naman. Sa streaming naman, kaya. We produced 60 movies the past 2 years, trying to help out, give jobs to industry people, and I think we've been able to survive naman. So just sharing my thoughts here, Kong. Thanks.
Thank you, Vincent. I just want to mention 3 things. One is you mentioned the screen quota, which seems to be in place in Korea and has been instrumental in their decades-long journey towards this Hallyu ubiquity. Is it right to say that our screen quota mechanisms currently in place are the Metro Manila Film Festival, which will now have a summer edition also? Tama ba?
Yeah, it's very seasonal, and maganda kasi yung regularity of being able to get screens. I think meron naman ngayon na parang informal na allocation for local movies. But then again, syempre yung commerce pa rin tinitignan ng cinemas ang pagpapalabas. So if you don't perform in 2 or 3 days, you don't get to see the weekend. So hirap din, but syempre yun ang challenge sa ngayon. And we all try to survive with the situation. Sa kasi I think sa Korea, ni-lift na rin. Even in China, they still have that. I think yung quota na yan. But I guess because of GATT, hindi ma-implement dito. We've been trying to lobby that for many years now. But yun, wala pa. So,
Sorry, did you say GATT?
In GATT, I think it's a trade.
The General Agreement on Trade. Yeah.
So, yun lang. And then, syempre, kasama na rin dyan hindi maiwasan the big studios are also, in a way, represented by cinema operators. So, hirap din to get allocations. But kami in Viva, we get to live with that. So, we're okay naman.
How does it work, Ed, with Q Cinema, especially since you have a film festival also? So all cinemas in Quezon City sort of have a lockout for all your films?
No, we've been very selective with our cinemas for 2022 kasi we're just normalizing. But for the longest time, subsidizing ticket prices namin, we used to charge from 150 to 200 pesos for festival tickets. Pero it's really the theater owner's prerogative. So sadly, they ask us, dapat minimum 300. Some theaters allowed student prices. Some did not. So maybe with a partnership with the theater owners, baka we can come to a common ground where for special seasons, pwedeng ma-subsidize ang ticket prices for greater access to the general public.
So Ed, basically the Quezon City government, LGU, allocates funds for subsidy for the ticket prices on top of producing the festival.
Yes, or we reduce our share from the tri-party sharing of the festival, the theater owners, and the producers.
Okay, got it. Thank you for that. And then, yes, Kong Richard, go ahead.
I'm trying to read through the official gazette of the government that when the Film Academy was established through Executive Order 640, it said that it also has a film fund. So, Manny, are you as OIC, are you also the Director General of the Film Academy?
Well, sort of.
So, is there an existing film fund?
Only coming from the yearly proceeds of the Metro Manila Film Fest. If there are no proceeds, then we don't have the money.
Oh, because Chair Toff, I remember during our budget hearing, in its entirety, when we approved the budget of the CCP, I don't recall talking about the Film Academy of the Philippines. So I was thinking, since the Film Academy has has very limited budget, maybe we can do an oversight on this, on how we can extend the Film Academy in putting some budget for its operation. Kasi, their movement is very restricted due to limited funds and resources. And without that, hindi talaga makakagalaw.
Agree.
Can I add on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Manny.
Okay. The Film Academy should be under the oversight, as I have said, by the Department of Education. And even during the time of Leo Martinez, we were working on the recognition for that. And we were requesting DepEd to put us in the GAA of DepEd. It was not I don't know what happened, but it was not included in their budget, or I don't know if they recognize us as under their site. That is the main problem, and that's why we have a letter sent to the Department of Education to reassess our situation at the moment, which is not given yet by the office.
Mr. Chairman, looking at the executive order of the President 640, I do not see anything that involves the Department of Education. But what I really see here is the involvement of the FAP under the Cultural Center of the Philippines. Maybe the correct agency would not be Department of Education, but under the CCP.
Congressman Gomez, there is, I just forgot the executive, the papers, but we have already an order for that matter that we POP is under DepEd. That's why, as I have said earlier, we're working on that recognition.
So, teka lang, kasi nung tinakal namin yung budget ng DepEd and its attached agencies, wala naman din yung Film Academy.
That is why I have a copy of that.
You're pushing to be connected or
yes
to the DepEd, but at the moment you're not.
Yes. Well, you can ask from the letter we sent Ms. Florendo last year. She even gave us an information with regards to this order that we cannot seek financial help from CCP because we are under the oversight of DepEd. She has that record also. And we have that record. I do have that record. I just forgot the executive number of that record, but I do have it, a copy of that.
Siguro Kong Richard will file a resolution.
Yes, Kong. I think
oversight tayo dito sa Film Academy.
Yes.
I hope the proper agency. I hope you people can help us with regards to this, as this is the main problem yearly by the Film Academy. Survival is our problem every year.
Yes.
Oo.
Yes.
Hindi pwedeng nakasalalay kayo.
Yes,
hindi kayo pwedeng nakasalalay sa proceeds from Metro Manila Film Fest.
It has been that way, Kong.
Sige. We will, okay. Comsec and Attorney Rod, let's work with the office of Kong Richard. Other members who are present who want to co-author this resolution that we will draft, you are more than welcome. Okay. Ano pa ba? Oh, a comment na lang siguro on what Vincent said. I totally agree. There's no shortcuts to achieving a Hallyu ubiquity. Again, this happened as early as 1997 in South Korea under the leadership of Kim Dae-jung. And it's like decades until they reach this level that we're at. But we do have goalposts that we have to hit in the short, medium, and long term. As envisioned in the law that we crafted and was recently passed, we have to be the number one creative economy in ASEAN by 2030. So it's 2023. Happy New Year. We have 7 years to get there. And it will require intense partnership and a lot of reforms also in terms of policy and more government support. And thankfully, the administration is very, very open and supportive of the sector. And then, okay, so you mentioned the Cinema Evaluation Board, and that was also part of the position of CCP earlier, as shared by Attorney Klein. So the Cinema Evaluation Board was an effective tool of the Film Development Council before it was challenged in the Supreme Court, I believe, by the Cebu City government, and it was struck down. So I think this is something that we tried to address through a bill that we filed and was passed in the previous Congress, but unfortunately it wasn't acted on in the Senate. This is earmarking amusement tax collections for creative industry programs within the LGU. So at least whatever is collected will go back to the sector. But again, it's the LGU that decides, because there seems to be this Supreme Court ruling that we cannot dictate on the LGU on how they should spend their revenue. However, I just want to inform all the stakeholders that I spoke to Deputy Speaker Ralph Recto about this, and his team is looking to review the Supreme Court ruling and possibly appeal it. I don't know. I see Attorney Georgie saying no. Please do share. What are your thoughts on that before I keep talking? Go ahead.
It's an unbanked decision, Kong Tof, which had already, where two motions for reconsideration were filed and they were both denied. So that will not change. That is already set precedent by the Supreme Court. The solution there is to amend the local government code. That's a way to do it.
Okay. And which particular provision?
The provision on amusement taxes.
On amusement tax. Okay. All right. Yeah. Again, the bill that we filed was to abolish amusement tax for 2 years with an additional 2 years extension as decided by the DOF if still needed. And then thereafter reduce it to 5% earmarked for creative industry programs of the LGU. So I guess I don't know if we've refiled that bill, Attorney Rod. Have we? The film and live events recovery.
Yes, we have, Kong. Yes, we have.
Okay. Maybe let's get support from the other members of the committee. Let's really lobby. That's not in our committee. That's in local government.
It's in local government.
Sige. Sige, we'll work on that. I suppose that is the way forward. Thank you, Attorney Georgie. So I guess we'll get in touch with Deputy Speaker Ralph. This is months ago when we were casually talking about it, and he said he would look into it. Okay. All right. We're supposed to move on to the second topic, but I think we've covered a lot already. The second topic was really on film industry data collection and management, and the DTI and the Philippine Statistics Authority were supposed to present on this, although Assistant Director Jodan kind of talked about it already earlier, but Michelle Viernes from the PSA, you're with us. Did you want to share anything or add anything to what was mentioned? Michelle.
Good morning, Tom. Yes, good morning.
Hi.
Yes. For the PSA, we have already we are coordinating with the DTI in terms of the estimation of the creative industry. So the comments a while ago will be discussed later on. for the improvement of these estimation procedures. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then from the private sector, it was supposed to be SAYAP, as well as the PMPPA, and I believe Malu Santos is with us. If you'd like to share anything. Or anyone from PMPPA? Comsec.
Attorney Arnel Orgaz is here with us.
Attorney
Arnel Orgaz.
Attorney Arnel.
Hello, Kong. Good morning to everybody.
Hi, Attorney Arnel. Good to see you.
Thank you. I think several members of the PMPPA already gave their comments and statements. So for PMPPA and AFPI, we have taken note of the inputs of the various resource persons that have spoken earlier, and we will discuss this internally, and hopefully we can provide our inputs for the upcoming meetings.
I have a question. So, Attorney Arnel, and for other members of the PMPPA, so, diba, recently when Made in Malacanang came out, and it was supposed to be like the #3 highest grossing film of all time, and then #1 was the Catherine Bernardo and what is this? Alden Richards film. And then there's also Himala. So there's like a top 10. And then, of course, with this recent Metro Manila Film Fest, Deleter is #1. Partners in Crime is #2. So how are these box office revenues estimated? Is there a official mechanism in which to report box office revenues? Is it self-declared? Is it self-declared by the producers? And what's the value in declaring it? Is it more of like a marketing tool na it's earning so much money, so come watch? Anyone? Like when somebody says, oh, this earned 1 billion, I mean, how is that vetted? I mean, do we just take the producer's word for it? Yes, Miss Malu. Yes, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, I was out kanina. Good afternoon, everybody. Actually, we have the distribution office, the NCAP, yeah, represented by the different theater owners or the different distributors. So we get our receipts there, and we have our checkers who get our receipts. So sometimes, definitely it's being used as a marketing tool by the different producers, but actually there are producers who really give the true results, but sometimes it's really bloated. For us to invite other moviegoers to watch the movie, at least it's a big help if we boost the receipts sa cinemas. So they will be enticed to watch the movies. It's being used, yeah.
Hello?
Okay,
But
so
it's
in
being
terms of like,
reported, Kong Tof, it's being reported officially. There are official papers that is being released for the two results. Yeah.
Malu, you mentioned NCAP. What does that
NCAP,
stand for?
that's the Association of the Different Distributors.
Okay. Comsec, baka we should invite NCAP to attend future meetings, especially if we're talking about productivity in the film industry and revenues being generated.
Kongtov, can I add?
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, it's the association, they determine the play dates, the movies that will be shown in different cinemas. It's they're the decision makers in connection with the SEA.
But SEAP and NCAP are different.
Yeah, but some members of SEA are members of NCAP.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Director Carlitos, you're raising your hand.
Thank you. I think the closest to transparency that I can think of would be the reports of the MMFF, because that is administered by those are public records, I guess, administered by a government agency. So those are those reports of the MMFF are the most accurate that I'm aware of. But other than that, I think box office figures, as far as transparency goes, it really all depends on the consent of the private parties, such as SEAP is probably, I believe SEAP is a private party, producers are private. So yeah, I don't know, that's the challenge there, to get the consent for truthful reporting to, you know.
What?
But in this case, because we're talking about, but in this case, because we're talking about really, having a government plan for the industry, it really behooves the industry to supply this information transparently to the government agencies.
Yeah. Comsec, did we invite the Bureau of Local Government Finance?
They're not included in the list, Mr. Chair.
Maybe we can invite them to the succeeding hearings. And actually, Joe Dan, are you in touch with them? It might be helpful if you reach out to the DILG BLGF.
Okay.
Because they would know amusement tax collections. Or if not them, somebody from DOF. Kasi maybe you can sort of estimate based on amusement tax collection is 10% of, the ticket sale. So you compute going up, and you more or less be able to ascertain the overall productivity of the film industry insofar as movie tickets are concerned. Of course, iba pa yung subscription sa Netflix and all the streaming services.
We'll do that accordingly, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the guidance.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Siguro we'll open the floor to members or even stakeholders. Parang the subject now is film industry data collection and management. I mean, where does everybody stand in terms of like data? Whether it's box office related, non-box office related, like how does everyone feel about this film registry that's being maintained by the Film Development Council? Is it helpful? And other sorts of data points that you feel government should be working on, or maybe can fund to help boost the sector. Does anybody have anything to share about data? Yes, Ed.
Yeah, I think it's crucial to have those data collection mechanisms, not just for box office figures, during the festival. It has to be all year round, but also the number of productions per year. These are crucial information we need for market research to track the growth of our industry, whether it's theatrical or streaming, that we seriously lack. Kasi a lot of the bigger film industries abroad have this data, and they use this to provide the private sector for possible joint ventures or additional investment mechanisms to flow into the industry. So maybe the box office figures is just one step, but with the government agencies we have, like the film commissions, NFDCP, and the National Registry, sobrang importante to attract more investments and also for foreign productions. So yung mga quick reference, industry, the status of the industry. We need those to provide Screen International, Variety, Hollywood Reporter when they need to have a profile of a country. Also for the American Motion Picture Association, they need that to strengthen our position in Southeast Asia. Kasi nga, number 2 yata tayo aside from Indonesia as far as the Hollywood market is concerned. So yes, they're very crucial.
So may iba pa palang benefits yung data collection.
Yes.
It's very interesting. Oh nga, I mean, yeah, sa bagay, I do read articles on like Variety and Deadline about how much was earned by a certain film or within a certain quarter. So
if I may just add, I used to be a film correspondent for Screen International. I did a market study like 6 years ago. Sobrang hirap kumuha ng data from our film industry. I mean, I had to go from one studio to another, from the government sources, usually wala, or it's like 10 years late. So if we need our industry to grow, we need this data in a very crucial way to achieve growth.
Mm-mm. And you can, I suppose, leverage the data points for, you're right, co-productions, trade, bilateral, multilateral trade agreements on film.
Including ayuda.
And of course, yeah, with regards, especially with the film registry that was created.
Yes.
Kong Stella's raising her hand, you're recognized.
Thanks, Chair. I think since we are literally at the starting point now, meaning we are beginning to define the bounds of industry, defining it, etc. What we need from the DTI as well as the PSA is an accounting framework. So many years ago, decades ago, we did this for the health sector. We created a national health account, meaning it's really an accounting framework. So we know what is total spending on health, as well as sources and uses of funds. So I think that's also a good way to proceed at this point with respect to the industry, meaning magkano ba talaga ang total na ginagastos in the Philippines, as well as by other countries on local films. So, but we need an accounting framework. So beginning with, again, the boundaries, right? And that's why I asked my first question earlier was what's really the working definition of the industry. But and then we need to trace out the flow of funds, right? And so yeah, so I think that's just what I want to say. We should task the DTI with the help of the PSA to come up with this accounting framework. So I don't know if people need help. Like the reason for why I mentioned the National Health Accounts is because I was a professor at UP then. We helped the government create this accounting framework for the health sector. So obviously we will need the help of the private sector, the academe. So I think the first the starting point really is really understanding the how the market is structured, right? How the entities within the industry relate to one another. So you're able to understand the flow of funds. And then later on, that's how you will be able to like figure out how you are supposed to account for all monies that go into the industry, and that, uses and sources basically. So that's all, Chair.
Got it. Thank you. Very helpful, Kong Stella. And the DTI and the PSA are so directed. I guess that's also diba, the satellite account that we're supposed to create. Any other comments from the stakeholders on data collection? What type of data do you feel will be helpful to the industry moving forward? If there are no suggestions at the moment, you are free to just submit to the committee any kind of suggestion, and we will forward it to the necessary agency that can act on it with endorsement. And unless there are other queries from the members. Okay. O sige. So, baka we can move on to other matters. Direk Carlitos, yes, go ahead. You're recognized.
No, I thought it was like a general query. I mean, I'll just reserve my, because this is a belated, it's a delayed reaction lang to something that was mentioned earlier. Maybe I'll just put it in the chat box, but because I don't want to disturb the flow of the.
Yeah. Or you're
of
welcome to also just
meeting.
message.
I'll just put it in the chat box. Sorry. Okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, so before we entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting, could we just remind the group again about what the agenda for the next meeting will be? Comsec, do you have a slide? Can we flash the slide again? Okay, so we're for the next hearing, we're talking about we're discussing 4 topics: industry regulations, very lightly on workers' rights and welfare, because these have been thoroughly discussed in other committee hearings concerning other bills. Ease of doing business. This one we want to be able to discuss thoroughly, to get to know the experiences of producers when they're shooting, how they're dealing with the LGUs, how many permits have to be obtained, etc., etc. And of course, subsidies and grants. So maybe this is really more on the program of the FDCP, which I think there are about 4 or 5 different types of grants that they are providing. And then also, just to remind the government resource persons, FTCP and DTI are supposed to be presenting in the next hearing their data points. FTCP in terms of like all their programs for 2023 as funded by Congress, and DTI in terms of like the market study findings. I think that would be very, very helpful for everyone. And then the CCP, you had like a general sharing. If you could just also present to us what are your specific programs for film in the next hearing. And sorry, Attorney Klein, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
How will these film programs be affected by the 3-year renovation of CC? Or is it 2-year? 3 years.
3 years. So far, we're planning to, as far as I know, we're planning to have different venues for these programs, but there's nothing concrete as of now.
Oh, kasi the Cinemalaya, you show it in your theaters, diba?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
but so far,
all the Cinemalaya films.
Yeah, we're coordinating with other how do you say it, like movie theaters, and how to show these films. But so far, there's nothing concrete as of now.
Okay, yeah. So if you could just sort of give us like a quick presentation in the next hearing, like what are your programs for film? How are you contributing to, this initiative that we are undertaking? Yes, Congress Chair.
On the next committee hearing on January 17, all the data that we need to collect, can that be the first part of our committee meeting on January 17?
Yes. So yung mga utang from this hearing,
yeah.
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. There being no other matters to be discussed, can I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
There's a motion duly seconded, and there being no objection, this meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.